大怪盗アルセーヌ・ルパンが残した不思議な宝物ルパンコレクションがギャングラーに奪われた。失ったものを取り戻すために戦う怪盗、世界の平和を守るために戦う警察、君はどっちを応援する？
Hello and welcome to LupinRecap vs. PatReview, the podcast that's stirring up a storm. I am your host, Lokamasi, and with me is my lovely co-host, Fefner Masamune.
I don't fucking have Uno, motherfuckers. Hi, it's me, Fefner.
You have Uno! It came with your fucking Xbox. Oh, that's it? We're not doing the whole thing? Okay. And
we should not go on that long about Uno.
But you have it!
I don't fucking have Uno.
Yes, you do! I'm sorry we're going on about a 7-year-old meme by this point. But today we're talking about episode 41 of Lupin Ranger vs. Pot Ranger. But before that, we are no longer so limited in our Sentai experience. We've both watched the first episode of Q Ranger. So before we talk about Lupat, we figured we'd compare it to Q Ranger for a bit. We've only seen the first episode. We're not going to do much of a recap, if any at all. We're just going to talk about the episode.
Yeah, and even if we did, it was a pretty simple episode.
So I think the only comparison we really can make as far as Rangers go, due to the weirdness in both Lupat's setup and Q Ranger's setup, is comparing Red Rangers. Of the three, Lucky is the worst. I like Lucky. He's fine.
He's good, but yeah.
I don't think he becomes really good until, I think, episode 12. Like, I have a specific episode in mind. There's a moment where he goes from, like, alright, I tolerate him, to holy shit, that rules.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he's likable enough in the first episode.
Oh yeah, certainly. I didn't realize he was going to be the Red Ranger. Because he's not one of the first characters to appear. Well, he is, but, you have the normal Rangers at the start. They're already Rangers. And then he just flies in out of nowhere and crashes. But he's fine. So yeah, he's just kind of a dingus who shouts about how lucky he is. And initially, he does not have Orb, but by the end of the episode, he has Orb.
And then he rides a meteor into battle.
Yeah, that rules.
Yeah, I guess this is also about the importance of timing, because the meteor riding happens towards the end of the episode, but Lupin Red's incredible appearance happens at the beginning of the Lupat pilot. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so much better, because, you're 5 minutes in and these motherfuckers break in through a window blaring their theme music.
Yeah, it's hard not to get the audience's attention like that.
Of the other Rangers that we've seen, there was a black, a green, a yellow, and a blue Ranger. And they don't have really good analogs except possibly the Yellow Ranger Sparta because he's a chef. Calling him Proto-Toma might be weird.
Toma would shove him under the couch.
Yeah, only in the sense of, learning how to write a chef character. Because, Toma is a chef, and him being a chef is a super important part of his character. But he doesn't talk about being a chef all the time. He just does chef things.
I mean, partially because he can't, because that would give away his identity immediately, but, yeah, it's not his gimmick, it's his character.
Yeah, I feel like Sparta and Toma could be used to establish the difference between a gimmick and a character. Sparta, in later episodes, we're mainly focused on the first episode, but in later episodes, he does have something of a reason for his cooking. And it's not entirely... he has a reason for being a chef, it's not just goofball chef metaphor talk.
Yeah.
But it's still weird going back to Sparta after they did Toma so well.
Yeah. It is, I like how the Lupin Rangers still managed to be, super distinct without just having to have, those specific quirks.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something I necessarily mind in, Q Ranger's case, but it's just a case of, saw Lupin Ranger, and it's real good.
Mm-hmm. The main thing with Q Ranger is because there are so many more characters, they all need to stand out more.
Yeah,
So
and in the first episode especially, it kind of goes at a breakneck pace, and it already has to introduce a ton of characters,
yeah.
and there's still so many more to go.
hmm I think I would say they are more easily reducible.
Mm-hmm.
That they can be reduced to a couple of sentences and more or less capture everything. For like the Lupin Rangers and the Pot Rangers, to describe them, you can get them down to a sentence, but you're leaving out a lot.
Yeah, especially in the first episode, you could probably boil them down a little bit, but at the same time, I think one thing that Lupin Ranger versus Pat Ranger does well is it introduces everybody more by group than characters, and then it spends the next few episodes introducing characters better one at a time.
Right.
But because the show is made up of two major groups, it just has to show off the groups. So it can show off their identities as a whole before moving on to the smaller elements.
I feel really bad for saying this about Jim, but I think I like the suit acting in Q Ranger more.
Mm-hmm.
By suit acting, I mean the suit characters like Jim, not the spandex suit acting.
Yeah, they're Rangers.
But they also have a robot. They have a Wolfman. They have a bull. It's voiced by Solid Snake.
Japanese Solid Snake, not David Hayter. They didn't fly him in for that.
Yeah, there's not just one character constantly speaking English for some reason. But that does make me sad that if this show ever did, get brought over to the US's Power Rangers, they're not going to get David Hayter. They're not going to make... They might still make that robot bull another, like, robot bull suit in the American version, but they're not going to get David Hayter to voice him.
No.
As amazing as that would be. I guess we have to talk about this at some point. So, sounds that the attack stuff make. I talked about how much I love the masquerade.
Yeah, Lupin Rangers, I would say, are better, but Q Rangers are also very good.
Galaxy.
Galaxy! It is a little repetitive is the problem.
But that just makes it funnier after a point.
Mm-hmm.
Super
It starts funny,
Galaxy.
it gets a little bit dull, but then it goes back into being funny again.
So, just comparing their first episodes, I think that Lupin has a better first episode.
Mm-hmm. I didn't think Q Ranger was bad or anything.
Oh yeah,
I just
by no
feel
means.
like it's a case of, like, knowing what I know about Sentai, I would have just thought of Q Ranger first, just, like, conceptually, I think. I feel like that's just sort of closer to what it is in my mind.
Yeah. If it weren't for the multitudes of characters, I would say Q Ranger would be a pretty good example of a standard Sentai.
Mm-hmm.
But because there's so many, that necessarily changes the formula in small ways. Or big
Yeah,
ways.
so, like, it's a little closer to classic Sentai, but it's also a bit different as well. I feel like it would have actually been a good idea if they did, like, focus on, fewer characters at a time, maybe. So, like, start with 1 or 2 Rangers, maybe 3, and then just sort of work there. Maybe have some of the other Rangers, like, work together or interact in smaller pairs for a bit before coming together as a team.
They get the initial 9 Q Rangers and in like 4 or 5 episodes. It's really fast by the time they get the full team together.
Yeah, like, they have the standard team size at the beginning of episode, or by the end of episode 1, right? Because they start with 3.
They start with 3, and then they get Garu and Lucky. But it would be neat if, like, instead of the one group slowly getting bigger, it was like Lupin, and there were 3 teams of 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then those 3, like, switch teams out, or switch members out for whatever reason, maybe.
I mean, yeah, like, the whole point of the show is that it's, like, more of it's a galaxy-focused thing. There's space travel, so... and there's a lot of, the main enemy has already mostly conquered the universe, so... It could just be a case of, like, people going to different planets to do different things, to try to stop the Empire.
I was mainly thinking of, like, you don't want to introduce the Rangers too late into the show, because then that's wasted potential.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think of a way to get the 9 Rangers all there, but then have them spread out, still do things. So The one thing I did want to talk about was Q Ranger's main theme was incredibly obvious to me, but that might just be because after seeing Lupot, I can tell what's different about it. And I think I can demonstrate it in just like the appearance of the Rangers. The first appearance of the Rangers in the show. Q Ranger's like overriding theme is of like hope in the face of insurmountable odds.
Mm-hmm.
And they show this by like they open with a playground full of children getting slaughtered. They don't show any kids dying, but they do show a kid being grabbed, and a second bad guy shows up with a sword. So like that kid's not his future prospects are not looking great.
No, it is much like the guy who gets dragged off so they can harvest his organs in Lupat.
Right, but it's a child and it's the entire Earth. And so they start off like super dark and bleak. And this is one of the reasons I don't mind the Q Rangers being as like quirky as they are, because when they first show up, their quirkiness sort of gives off an air of like everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah, like, it's hard to be afraid of what's going to happen in the future when you just have 3 people just shouting moo as they transform.
Yeah, when Solid Snake is shouting moo. I'm not sure I'm doing the best job of describing it, but like hope is an overriding theme in the show, and it starts at the first like transformation. As soon as the Rangers show up, you don't know how everything's going to be okay, but you think that everything can be okay.
Yeah, and then Lucky just falls in from the sky, and he's just super chipper, so, you know.
I didn't die! Talk about Lucky!
How can you be sad when he's on screen?
A lot of people didn't like Lucky at first. A lot of people were sad when he was on screen. I'm not one of them. I think I might have a harder time pinning down the Lupot theme. Fittingly enough, I think there's 2 general themes.
Mm-hmm.
The first being like the meaning of justice, which is like, well, yeah, they're cops, so of course they're going to be thinking about that. I think they're pushing it in a way that is good.
Yeah.
Because it's less of like bending the rules and more about why we have rules.
Yeah, like what inspires them to do good for other people, that sort of thing. I've mentioned this before, but they're theoretical cops, meaning they're much better than cops in actual practice.
Yeah, the Lupin Rangers have a similar thing, but theirs is more focused on like how far are you willing to go for your happiness?
Mm-hmm.
What are you willing to do? And as seen in episode 34, who are you willing to shoot?
Yeah, it's like they're all sort of personal, but at the same time, obviously the Pat Ranger side of it is more noble. It's more about like protecting people overall, but their own drive comes from within. It's their own thing.
So yeah, I think Lupot having 2 themes. It's weird because I don't think those 2 like in a vacuum necessarily go together, but in the show they just bleed into each other all the time.
Yep. I mean, it makes sense. The ideals are clashing. And you don't really want either one to be wrong, because then that would just mean one of the teams was wrong.
Right.
Hey kids, you know how we're really trying to make you think the Lupin Rangers are cool? Well, they're not.
There's nothing cool about stealing. God, what if that was on the like pirated copies? Just Lupin Red comes out like, I know we make stealing look cool, but it's not.
It's cool when we do it because we're stealing from the Hell Mob, but you're stealing for a corporation.
Did you do a backflip when you downloaded this episode? I don't think so.
I'm Kyrie, and while I don't like the Hell Mob, I do like corporations.
Oh, God. Oh, that's Sakia. He's the YouTuber. He has to show.
Well, he probably lost a brand deal after the Lupat toys didn't do so hot.
Oh, God. Well, I think that's enough about Q Ranger. I can say Q Ranger is a pretty good show so far. I'm about halfway through it. It feels mean to compare it to Lupot because I like Lupot so much. It's not like Q Ranger was a disappointment or anything. It's a very good show that does a different thing. And goes in different
it seems
directions.
But again, I've only watched the one episode.
I will put it this way, I'm definitely never making a Q Ranger podcast. Enough about that. Let's move on to episode 41.
So, episode 41 is The Door to Another World. Once again, we find ourselves at Juror. Kaichiro slams a jar down on a table and asks Kairi if he likes umeboshi. Kairi asks why, and Kaichiro opens his jar to reveal umeboshi. A lot of it. While the two of them discuss the finer points of umeboshi, Sakia asks how that thing Umiko was worried about turned out, and she thanks him for the help since it turned out well. Tsukasa looks back and forth between that conversation and the other, where Kaichiro brings out a second jar, and Tsukasa just looks happy to be there. But in the back, there's Toma, looking slightly less pleased. More just neutral. Back in Hell, Degranio has summoned Destra. Degranio notes that it's been a while since he's seen his right-hand man. He has no desire to punish Destra, he's just disappointed. Disappointed because it's been a while since he's raised some hell. He then muses that if Destra hadn't been his right-hand man up until now, he would have wiped out the competition already. Destra seems surprised, but Degranio asks him to think it over. And while he makes his decision, the intro plays.
I really like this scene as a setup for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Up to now, Destra has been, purposely not trying to win the competition.
Yeah, he's tried to help influence people. He's given a few collection pieces here and there, just because he's nice, and he probably likes certain people over others, but he's not really involved himself unless he's had the secondary task of helping someone else.
Yeah. He's tried to, deal with the Rangers because he thinks they're a threat to Degranio. But as far as, setups for an episode, Destra is going to be actively gunning for you now might be one of the most terrifying ones.
Yeah, we've seen enough of him to know that, don't want that. That's a guy who will kill me. Once we return, we find Tsukasa out and about on her own, but she spies Tuma nearby, groceries in hand and giving directions to a stranger. A girl, to be specific, which is important given Tuma never did clear the bad reputation he got when he got body snatched. Tsukasa approaches him and asks him if he's not flirting today. So if you just came in and started watching the show, yeah, that was a thing that happened a while ago by this point. I'd almost forgotten about that episode. Tuma just sighs and tells her it's not going to happen again, though Tsukasa mentions that he's free to do what he wants as long as it's not illegal. It's just that roasting someone is quite legal, so she's also free to do that. Tsukasa tries to tell Tuma about his influence on Kairi and Umika, but Tuma cuts in and mentions that the cops looked into their backgrounds. He tells her that it's obvious why she's more concerned about him lately, and wonders what they learned about him. Not that he cares. Definitely not.
Baka.
Tuma tries to walk away, though Tsukasa follows close behind. Tsukasa asks him if he's upset, which Tuma only replies that she's welcome as a customer, but if she cares about the other two, she should draw the line there. He then goes on to be very cryptic and say that part of that was meant for himself. It's a good thing I'm the viewer, I'd be really confused. Tsukasa tries to tell him that there's nothing wrong with being close, but the two are interrupted by this week's Ganglar. As you may have guessed, it's Destra. Been nice knowing you, Tsukasa.
God, I just kept waiting for Rex to give it to you to start playing. Because I associate that with Unstoppable Monsters now.
Noel's just in the background. What about me?
Alright, I forgot we already have an X character.
I can give it to people too. Watch this, and he does a backflip. What if Mr. X just backflipped towards you?
What if instead of X gonna give it to you, you played MAX power? He just kicks open the door. X.
God. Now I want that mod. Tsukasa pushes Tuma out of the way, and Kaisatsu changes before taking on Destra alone. Tuma, slightly out of the way, quickly pulls out his phone. And while he presumably calls for backup, Police HQ does the same. Jim gets the alert of Tsukasa's fight with Destra, who Noel reminds us is a status double gold. He rushes off to help Tsukasa, while Jim moves to call the other two. At Jur, Kairi and Umika have received Tuma's location and rush off to help. We then return to Sango's fight with Destra. It's not going well. Destra's hammer can catch fire now because he's that mad. Tuma, hiding behind crates, opts not to jump in without backup. But Sango isn't completely without help, at least, as X leaps in and manages to distract Destra a little. But the combined power of two Rangers amounts to little, as X is stuck dodging missiles and Sango is tossed through the crates that Tuma is hiding behind. As she de-transforms, she's worried as she sees Tuma still hanging around. But with Tsukasa in a precarious spot, Destra takes a moment to open a portal behind her before launching a volley of missiles. With a presumably average citizen about to be blown to smithereens, Tsukasa takes action by grabbing Tuma and leaping through the portal, which Destra closes behind her. X realizes that Destra's plan is to trap them all in the other world, where Destra will personally execute all of them in front of Degranio. He and X fight, and Destra quickly gets the upper hand, sending X flying into the water. If this is anything like the last time some of the Rangers were sent to Hell, that's the last we'll be seeing of him for the rest of the episode. In Hell, we see a fairly injured Tsukasa wake up to find Tuma unconscious nearby. She wakes him up, and they wonder where they are. Upon seeing a squad of Podamen lurking nearby, though, Tsukasa realizes that they must be in the Ganglar's world. Back at the scene of the previous fight, the cops and the Phantom Thieves both arrive on the scene, some more stealthily than others. Red sees Tuma's phone on the ground and moves to snatch it before the cops find it. Red assumes that Tuma's still fine, even if he lost his phone, and he and Yellow decide to look for Noel. But Noel's already here, so he's doing better than he did in the movie. In Hell, Tsukasa has a glow stick for some reason, which she uses as a light source. Sure.
So, it's not unheard of to have, like, glow sticks in an emergency kit, because they don't rely on electric power.
Flashlights too, though. You could just have a small flashlight.
Right. It depends on, like, what you're worried about. I forget the sort of problems that batteries can have. There are things that'll make batteries fail that won't make glow sticks fail.
I feel you should at least have both. And then if you wind up stuck with a glow stick, at least I'm going to die. Don't have any preconceived notions about surviving this. I've only got a glow stick.
At least I'm going out raving. Also, that glow stick was fucking useless. It is exactly as bright as it was before she turned on the glow stick.
Yeah, that's one of the glow sticks you just give to kids for Halloween. Not even like the useful ones for actually using outside. Just the ones that you have like 5 minutes with before you just get bored with it.
You just pray to God they don't somehow break it and spill the liquid everywhere.
While she patches up her injuries, she apologizes for getting Tuma dragged into this, though Tuma tells her that he shouldn't have been hanging around either. Tsukasa tells him that if push comes to shove, he should escape without her, as the Ganglars are after her. Supposedly. Tuma does mention that if they know he's there, they still wouldn't let him get away, civilian or no. Tsukasa tells him that he's got a good head on his shoulders and that he'd be a good fit for the tactical unit. Tuma, of course, finds the notion ridiculous. He insists that he's just an ordinary chef. But enough of that, it's Podamen time. Clearly they were drawn to the light of the glow stick. Tsukasa does some fighting, and today's highlight includes Tsukasa throws a single rock at a Podamen about to attack Tuma, taking it out instantly. Remember when Kaitro shot one with a normal-ass gun and it was useless? Tsukasa is canonically better than a normal gun.
I need to kill fast and bullets too slow. I'm not kidding. I think that like there was the mass Podamen extinction that occurred when the Rangers showed up led to them like rushing out worse Podamen.
That would actually make sense, to be fair.
These Podamen are weaker than they were in another Power and Nigo.
Back on the surface, Noel has explained the situation to Red and Yellow. Red figures they need to pin down Destra while the portal's still open if they hope to rescue their friends. But even that'll be difficult, as Tsukasa starts to get overwhelmed down in hell. Moving on an injured leg isn't easy either, and ends up getting her prone. But thanks to a shoulder tackle from Tuma, Tsukasa isn't taken out by a random mook today. Tsukasa asks him why he did that, and Tuma tells her that if anything were to happen to her, those two would be hurt. Tsukasa swears to get Tuma back to the human world, and the two make their escape from the cave. On the surface, Kaitro and Sakia are nearly killed the moment they run across Destra. They really should have transformed sooner, because Destra can just fire bullets from his arm. Don't think he can really stand up to that unless he got armor. They don't even have the time to transform, though, because Destra just opens a portal behind them, then blows them straight into it with a volley of missiles. Again, it's a good thing that he's not actively trying to kill them. I think it's more of a case of he's very aggressive, and if they happen to walk into a missile and explode, that's their fault.
Alright, I'm gonna start shooting missiles, and if you get hit with them...
Because he didn't really care that he almost killed X by launching him into the water. He was just like, did he die? Ah, well, whatever. I'm gonna find the other guys. I already know I'm killing at least one person in front of Degrania. That's good enough for me. Upon arriving, Kaitro, of course, already knows that they're in the Ganglar world. But before they can make it back through the portal, they're approached by something. Emerging from the mist, we see a familiar figure, eyes aglow, who wonders why the cops are here. Once again on the surface, Destra is about to close the portal, but he's interrupted by 3 grappling hooks from the remaining 3 rangers. Untransformed, despite the fact that they're facing Destra. Really not a good idea, guys. He flings the 3 of them to the ground and closes the portal, so that plan was ruined in an instant. They take the time to Kaito change now and begin fighting. Back in hell, Tsukasa and Tuma are ambushed by yet more Podamen. One manages to tackle Tsukasa to the ground and disarm her. Without hesitation, Tuma grabs Tsukasa's gun as it soars through the air and begins taking out Podamen left and right. Tsukasa and the Podamen on top of her are surprised to see an ordinary chef with such good skill with a gun. Tsukasa punches out the Podamen on top of her, and another 3 are taken out nearby by none other than Kaitro and Sakia. They tell the 2 to come with them, so they do. And, yet again on the surface, the Lupin Rangers are only barely managing to keep up with Destra. Red figures that Victory Striker will be useful here, so he activates his super form. He reads the future. Destra calls it a pitiful trick and charges forward. And so, with Epitaph showing him Destra's actions, Red fires. It does nothing to help, and Destra kicks his ass.
I really like this part.
It's one of those things where you kinda know where this is headed, but it's still great.
You can't defeat me, I have the ability to see the future. The future shows me kicking your ass. Oh no.
You do realize that I never do strategies, right? I just charge in. Destra rushes in, it's just my thing.
That's what my title card will say when they put me in Smash. Look, anything can happen.
I feel like this would be slightly too deep a cut, even for Smash. Red is thrown into a wall, and Noel realizes that seeing Destra's actions is useless because he's straightforward and very strong. Destra takes down X and Yellow with a volley of missiles and shifts his attention to a desperate but simple attack from Red. However, a hammer strike to the head drops Red to his knees. Destra moves to finish him off, but it seems Epitaph isn't only good for reading enemy movements. He tells Destra his luck is run out, and indeed, at that moment, another portal opens and Destra's hit by a couple of shots. That being said, though, it's lucky for Red that Destra actually decided to stop swinging his hammer. The portal didn't open for another moment. He could have just killed him.
Yeah, I always feel like the timing is slightly off in that scene.
Well, I was about to kill him, but like he said, my luck has run out, and like I really want to know where that's headed.
Also, just like, now we're safe, the Pat Rangers are here.
Kaitra, Tsukasa, and Sakia drop in prepared to fight, while Tuma makes his escape, smiling at Red as he goes. Destra wonders how they got back, and Sakia tells him that he's not a popular guy. None of the cops explain themselves, and the Kaisatsu change. They fight with Destra, though they don't gain any particular advantages. Red then throws Cyclone and Magic in Destra's direction, which Blue and Yellow grab as they leap in and enter. Blue, of course, being here all along. You know, the Pat Rangers can't prove anything. X will vouch for me.
Did we... I'm sorry, I've been zoning out a little bit. Did we mention the fucking smirk that Toma gives? Okay.
I didn't emphasize it, but...
I think we might need to, because god damn it.
It's quite the unusual thing to see from Tuma.
You can count the number of times Toma smiles on one hand if you only count the transformation sequences one time.
Mm-hmm.
So for one of them to just be like, hey, they still don't know, is weird.
Yeah. That rules. It is a really good expression, though. As usual, his facial acting's just really good.
Shokohama's really good at body acting.
Blue and Yellow enter Destra's very long password that I'm not going to repeat. But once the safes are open, they reach in and grab... nothing! At last, the Lupin Rangers learn that Destra doesn't have any collection pieces. He's just very strong. Of course, the viewers have also known that, but, you know, doesn't hurt to repeat it. You might have forgotten, but X figures that means they can just kill Destra right now, and waltzes in with his super form. He hands Good Striker to Kaichiro, who activates Pat Ranger Yugo. They charge their special moves and fire. Destra drops his hammer as he's hit by a one-hit strike and a super superior strike, and explodes. X and Yugo are relieved to finish off Destra, but Red only mutters that he's a monster. Because indeed, 2 special moves failed to even dent anything but Destra's pride. Still though, Destra throws out 2 golems, and he does retreat.
Lord, give me a sign. I really need to talk to you, though.
You go deactivate.
I can't not see Destra as Mr. X now.
Please just mod Destra into Resident Evil 2. And if they ever do a remake of 3, also replace Nemesis with him. Yugo deactivates, and Sango just completely collapses as she detransforms. X sends Good Striker to the Lupins, while the Pat Rangers take care of Tsukasa, and the Lupins form the Victory Striker. Meanwhile, the cops do help X form the X-Emperor Slash as well. A big fight happens, and the golems do surprisingly well given their golems. But X throws Siren Striker to Red, who uses it to change out the Kaiser's head, and then the Lupin Kaiser uses the Blast Him to Smithereens cannon, and they take out a golem. Red stuffs Goody's mouth with his Versus Changer for some reason, and takes out the Magnum. Magnum charges in to help X fight the other golem, giving him a chance to use Gunner Strike. Magnum also transforms and fires, taking out the other golem as well. The golems did okay, but, don't give them too much credit. Back at Jure, the Lupins celebrate their victory, though they're still worried about Destra surviving 2 special attacks. Kairi asks Tuma how he and the other cops escaped the Ganglar world. He doesn't know the details, but he knows that one of the other Ganglars betrayed Destra. And at Police HQ, Kaichiro and Sakia have told Tsukasa that it was Zamigo who opened the portal for them. We flash back to Zamigo, who, upon being accused of working with Destra, opens a portal back to the human realm.
I'll prove how much I'm not working with Destra.
Here you go, fuck up his plan, please. Kaitro asks why a Ganglar would help them, but Zamigo just dodges the question and leaves. Just with his usual, hey, that's cold line, and just, I'm out of here. Please, no more questions, I won't take them. Jim is surprised they trusted him, but Sakia says that rescuing Tsukasa was their top priority. Hilltop commends them for their actions, and also Tsukasa for hanging on through the whole thing. And then Tsukasa mentions that Tuma actually helped quite a bit. Sakia, who I guess was close enough to see the action, mentions that he handled the gun like a pro, which can only mean that he really likes action movies. Tsukasa, possessing the HQ's only brain cell, isn't so sure. Kaitro takes notice that she's looking away pensively. And back in hell, Destra punches a tree down. Ghost walks out from behind a different, unpunched tree, and tells Destra that a collection piece would help give him a leg up over the humans. She asks Destra if he wants her to lend a hand, and for once, it looks like he's giving something she's saying serious consideration. End of episode.
So that was a hell of an episode.
There's probably not much to talk about because the Ganglar of the week is Destra, but he's also not dead yet. Mm-hmm. We've talked about him before, and we'll talk about him later.
Yeah.
Now he's just very mad.
I guess I'll just make a comment on that last scene. I want to see an alternate version where, like, Destra punches a tree to the side, and as it falls over, Ghost is standing behind it.
She just goes behind a different tree and is like, okay, so, now for my entrance.
Or she just does the same, like, hello, Destra. Like, what were you going to do if I punched it from, like, the opposite side of you, huh? What was your plan then?
I guess I should also mention that I do appreciate that now that Destra is, entering the whole succession game, that his plan still involves Degranio in some way. His whole plan is to just throw the Rangers into hell and then kill them in front of Degranio.
He does still have to show off a bit. I mean, it would be too jarring if he just showed up and murdered Noelle.
Yeah. But I do just appreciate, okay, Destra, go do your own thing. Right, I'll be back in a couple of minutes when I get the Rangers down here. Destra, remember, I have a TV. No, but it's only good if I do it in person, Degranio.
Also thinking, like, there are other Ranger-affiliated characters that they don't have to replace if they die. But, like, that's the thing about me, like, joking about Noelle dying, because they don't have to replace Noelle. But if one of the other Rangers die, it's like, well, it'll be awkward if they don't get replaced. So, like, Destra just shows up and murders Jim.
Oh, no.
I know, it's the saddest thing.
Osaki is dead. Can we get the last guy back? He's got experience being Nigo.
Man, like, I'm trying to think of ways to make Destra even more terrifying, and, like, that's hard. But I'm thinking, like, they chase Destra off, like, oh, we managed to chase him off, good work, team, and then they, like, go to their respective HQs, and, like, Kogre and Hilltop's bodies are just there. With a note from Destra. I don't know why I'm going so fucking grimdark right now, just...
Though that does remind me that, I do appreciate the fact that there's, like, an actual visible, or, like, there's an actual difference between, like, how the groups handle themselves, in that Destra knows to go after the cops, even when they're not transformed, because they don't normally care about secret identities. So he doesn't even realize that he did accidentally snag a Lupin Ranger as well.
I mentioned when we were watching this episode, I think it's neat how the Pot Rangers are treated as, like, the answer to Destra.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we deal with Destra when we need the Pot Rangers? Because Super Red can't do shit.
Yeah, nope, he's got nothing, but, the Pot Rangers are less flippy, more just shooty and aggressive, which matches Destra pretty well.
Mm-hmm. The Noel is also like one of the people capable of taking on Daestra in his Super Lupin X form.
Yeah, and even
But I
like,
consider that to be more cop than thief.
mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah,
it was
since his Lupin form is more, it has more attributes of the cops and their fighting style, as we've mentioned before.
yeah.
Which is why his Lupin form does so well normally. And then he tries Kaisatsu form and just gets owned immediately.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna give it to X. The tables have turned.
Though also, I did really like that one moment where I forget who he protected, but he just charged in and his armor reflected the hammer, and then somebody else took that opportunity to just tackle Destra.
Mm-hmm. God, the fights in the show are so good.
Choreography is real nice.
I guess that's one final comparison with Q Ranger. The choreography in Q Ranger is good, but I don't remember things like I remember in Lupin.
Yeah, there was less that stood out to me immediately.
Yeah, there's more like goofy stuff, which is fun in its own right, but like Toku Gifts does not upload gifs of like super badass fights from Q Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
There's not going to be like that one episode where Lupin Red did a flip and grabbed Goody mid flip, and then by the time he hit the ground, he was three people. So overall, this was a good episode. This was a fun episode. There's not much for us to really dissect or speculate about.
Yeah, it was a fight episode.
There's not even much to gush about, really.
Other than the fighting, but we've done that.
Yeah, here's my prediction. The final episode is going to be 2 hours long. It's just going to be us gushing constantly about how great everything was.
Yeah, I guess if there's anything to talk about, it's Tuma and Tsukasa, but I don't really have much to say about it.
Yeah,
There's not much depth to it. It's just Tsukasa initially thinks that, Tuma is just an average person, but then sees him handle a gun pretty well, which might go some interesting directions.
Yeah, it is sort of like it's episode 41 and we're just now getting these two to talk to each other. Like, I don't think they just forgot about them for 40 episodes. I think they held off on purpose because that creates a different dynamic.
Oh yeah.
But it is nice that they're the entirety of the two teams have come together now.
Mm-hmm.
Toma's actually spoken to Tsukasa.
He's actually spoken to anyone without immediately hating it.
Yeah, he doesn't. He despises Sakia.
Never speak of that again. Thank you and goodbye.
And he's very I don't talk to cops with Keiichiro.
Yep.
I don't know why he's not like that with Tsukasa, but... So yeah, I think that does it for this episode. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at LRVSPR, Fefner's Masamune. If you want to email us, you can email us at LupinRecap via spotreview@gmail.com, and we will see you in the next episode.
Adieu. Next time, Daestra actually fucking dies, probably.
Adieu.